This is a production of SDPB.
Coming up on Game Time, are you ready for some big-time matchups at the Corn Palace? Well, we are too. We have a complete preview of the 43rd Annual Hanson Classic, including a chat with Jerome Neshem, the head coach of the unbeaten Clark Willow Lake Cyclones. Plus, we've got more game changers. There are a lot of big-time performances to get to, and as always, we get you set up for the best top tilts coming up in the next week. All that and more on Game Time.
Game Time is supported by the South Dakota Career and Technical Student Organization Center. Through CTSOs, South Dakota students can learn professional development, leadership, and industry-specific skills, helping students learn, lead, and succeed.
Another week of Game Time here on SDPB. I'm Nate Wek, joined as always by Jason Andera. Yeah, Girls Hanson Classic is in the books. We are transitioning to the boys' side of the Hanson Classic. It's a great time of year, and we've been able to see some really exciting matchups with some of these classics, including the girls' classic this past week.
You feel like you're learning just a little bit more about what to expect, but a lot of these teams still haven't peaked, but it's always great to get that glimpse of what they can do in mid-season form against top tilt competition, and that's what we've seen with these Hanson Classics, and looking forward to seeing what the boys can bring to the court this week.
Absolutely. Well, let's get started with some of the headlines from this past week. Where should we start, Jandy?
Well, let's talk about some of the Tuesday things that happened. To me, a couple things that stood out is you had a top 5 battle in AA on the girls' side and a top 5 battle on the boys' side. In the girls' side, it was O'Gorman really showing what they could do against Aberdeen Central, their first test against one of those top-tier teams in AA. That was the first loss of the year for Aberdeen Central in state, and O'Gorman made it look easy.
So you talk about that game, that third quarter. How big was that for O'Gorman?
Well, O'Gorman pulled away in the third quarter, no doubt, but the third quarter I was talking about was what Roosevelt did in their game against Harrisburg. They were down at halftime, and Mitch Begeman turned things around, got the defense going, got the rebounding going, and they went on an absolute tear in the third quarter. And so that 2 versus 3 matchup really, really tilted in the second half, and Roosevelt walked away looking like the second best team in AA.
Yeah, that was one of those key matchups that we were really interested to see how it played out. You think it's a little different if the game's in Harrisburg?
It could be. It definitely could be, because the crowd and the momentum, it just totally was a landslide after that halftime where Roosevelt started making their shots from the outside. And that definitely has a little bit to do with it. And these two teams see each other again. I mean, all bets are off. These are two really good AA teams.
And then right back real quick to the O'Gorman girls. Just how good are they?
They executed so well, and the nice thing for them is they don't really have a weakness. I mean, they can play the half-court game, they can play the mid-range game, they can shoot from 3, they press as well as anybody in the state. They have over 16 assists per game. They pass the ball really well. There's no weakness, and they do it with seniors, juniors, and sophomores. So a really nice mix for O'Gorman this year. And after that opening loss to Brandon Valley, I mean, I think this team has really turned things around.
A well-oiled machine.
A well-oiled machine.
Well, another one of the teams that we'll jump to as far as the headlines too is Watertown, the Arrows team. Last year won just 6 games. This year, now they are 8-1 to start. I mean, a really good start for Pat McClemmon's team. And it just seems like this year they're playing a lot more in unison, a lot more cohesiveness with that group that maybe they didn't have a year ago.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's a lot of new teams to the polls, and Watertown busted through to the polls this week. And like you said, the only loss this year to T-Area early in the year, and they've been playing really well this year. And you had a chance to talk to the head coach, and he said they're playing much better together.
Yeah, so his son, Jackson McClemmons, last year was the leader in points per game throughout the season. Mm-hmm. This year, Jackson's number 3 in points per game. So you can see that the ball's being spread out a lot more. You're getting point efficiency from other areas and things like that. Plus, you got 3 guys on that team that are 6'5" or taller, that are in that starting lineup. So, I mean, that's going to boost your team too. We talk about in Class B a lot, if you have that one big that can be a part of your team, it can boost you to a top tier. In Class AA, if you don't have if you don't have some size, you're going to get buried. So Watertown, they're using their size a little bit this year. I just think they've done a really good job so far. One thing to note, though, with Watertown is they haven't played Lincoln yet. They haven't played, Roosevelt yet, Jefferson, Washington, the Sioux Falls metro area. So we'll see kind of how things go. But they do have a quality win over Mitchell.
Yeah, give them props. They're new into the polls. A couple other new teams in the polls this week. Parkston boys moved back into the polls at number 10. They are currently actually number 2 in seed points. So the polls kind of just catching up with what the seed points already have told us. They've been outstanding since Bill Marquardt has taken over as the head coach. He's got a lot of experience doing it, and he's done a great job turning that team around this year. A couple other teams to mention. Stevens girls getting into the polls this week at number 5. Had a 2-2 start and now have won 5 in a row. The Clark Willow Lake girls getting in there with a big win this week. They've got some quality wins. They haven't lost since their opener to Sioux Valley. They got wins against Millbank, Groton, Flandreau, and now they play Roncalli coming up on Thursday. So this is a team that's starting to catch up with the boys team as a team to really watch out for. And Corsica Stickney jumped back into the polls, and that kind of leads us into the Girls Hanson Classic because they got a win over previously unbeaten Harding County.
Yeah, that was one we talked about last week. We were really excited to see how Harding County was going to play in that game against Corsica Stickney, how Corsica Stickney was going to play against Harding County because Harding County, their defense, they kind of just go the whole game. And yeah, Corsica Stickney, it was a good game. It was a close game. Play that game, 2-3 more times, and you might get some different results.
Yeah, this Corsica Stickney team has been outstanding, especially on the defensive side this year, and they really showed what they can do against a good Harding County team. But let's get into the Girls Hanson Classic and some of the results from last Saturday at the Corn Palace. These were fun games, Nate.
Yeah, they really were. And we had Sanborn Central Woonsocket taking on Elk Point Jefferson. Really good win for Sanborn Central Woonsocket.
Yeah, EPJ had just gotten done beating Wagner the week before, so for Sanborn Central Woonsocket to come out and really hand it to them, they've now won 7 straight. They held EPJ to 25% from the field. I think that's what got it done for them.
And then we talked about Corsica Stickney beating Harding County 53-46, but then you also have Lyman, who's been a really good team this year. A very narrow victory over Mulbridge Pollock.
Yeah, that one was back and forth, and Blake Thompson erupted for Mulbridge Pollock. They were losing by as many as 15 in the second half, and came back and almost closed the gap. But Max Scott came up with another huge game. 22 points, 7 rebounds, got it done right at the end of the game with some clutch free throws.
Then you had St. Thomas More going against Dakota Valley. Another close one, just a 2-possession game at the end.
Yeah, right at the end, St. Thomas More kind of pulled away from Dakota Valley, but, that one could have went either way most of the game. It's a big win for St. Thomas More, who is looking for some quality victories as they want to get back up to that elite level.
And then we talked about Wagner suffering that loss to Elk Point Jefferson. Well, they rebound and, no pun intended, but they rebound and get a nice win over a good Hamlin girls team.
This Wagner team is really starting to click. That EPJ game was a little bit of an anomaly just from what I've seen them, what they've done to Ethan this year, and now what they've done to Hamlin, especially Addie Neuendorf having a big game for Hamlin, and Wagner still finding a way to get it done. 27 points to lead the Red Raiders back. They got off to a terrible start in that game, and they still found a way to come back and get a win.
And then this was the one we were really looking forward to, was Makpialuta, the 1, versus Lennox, the 2. And yeah, it was one of those games where I feel like it did live up to the hype. But yeah, Makpialuta did get the 10-point advantage in that one, but really good game to kind of end the night.
Yeah, this was a 1-point game with just a couple minutes left, and then Makpialuta scored the final 9 points. I love what Lennox did defensively. They made Makpialuta spread the ball around. It wasn't going to be the Ashlyn Carlo Blunt show. It wasn't. It was very balanced scoring from Makpialuta. But Lennox, I think, learned a few things on the big stage in this game, and again, I definitely don't think this is the last. We'll see these two teams. These two feel like the real legit contenders in Class A right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the girls' Hanson Classic, absolutely a success. Some great matchups. And like you said, we find out a little bit about some of these teams and what they do. It's a good test for them, going up against some of the adversity, learning some things about themselves.
Big stage, yep.
It's not just us learning about them, it's them learning about each other too.
Exactly. And that's the thing that we underestimate, watching high school kids play basketball, is how much they're learning game to game and correcting some of the things that they can do. And, it's no surprise that we see totally different teams by the end of the year as these teams do learn more about themselves.
All right. Well, that's kind of a little bit of a rundown of the Girls Hanson Classic. As always, every week, let's get into the game changers.
The game changers, a lot of players to talk about. Let's start with Bryson One-Star of White River going over 30 points on a Thursday game against Bennett County. And on the other side, Bennett County's Rush O'Neill scored 31 points in that game. Isaac Leaders had a couple of big games now. A 39-point game on Thursday, another big game on Tuesday for him. How about Ashton Coster, 28-point performance against Platte Geddes. Let's go down to Trey Hansen of Vermilion. They played Lennox, lost in the waning moments of that game. Aiden Hansen had a big shot for Lennox, but don't count out what Trey Hansen did in that game. A 34-point performance for him in the midst. Jet Yackley went for a big game for Sully Buttes. Chris Beavers continues to have big games for Clark Willow Lake. Brady Schroedermeyer's been on this list almost every week. How about Sam Rick out of Millbank? A 31-point performance, 4 big threes as they defeat Redfield. I got to point out Kobe Flowers, though. This is a guy for Westington Springs. I love this Westington Springs team. They've really come back, and he's not only scoring the points, he's filling up the stat sheet, Nate.
Yeah, he is. When you look at the assists, the rebounds, the steals, it's almost like a few more plays around the ball, and he might find himself in a triple-double. Because of how close he's getting in some of these other categories. But yeah, when you see the defensive effort that complements that offensive effort, I say it every week, that's what we love to see.
Love to see it. Lincoln got a big win over Huron last week, and a couple of their stars in that game. Brody Schaefer goes for a 7-assist game. Brody Newer actually led them in scoring with 21. Grant Wilkinson, a pair of 20-point games as usual. Against Clark Willow Lake, DeSmet really did. They struggled, and they didn't hit the boards as hard. But Grant Wilkinson still had a 20-point game and then came back a couple nights later and went for a 29-point, 22-rebound game. So, yeah, he can still hit the boards.
Yeah, and Clark Willow Lake, again, their defense has just been one of their pieces of identity this year. So, that when you look at the Grant Wilkinson performance, give credit to Clark Willow Lake on how they defended him as well.
Exactly.
And he's going to get his.
He's going to get his, exactly. And I love the way CWL defended him, but they still gave up 20 points in the process, so that's great. Zane Messick out of Hill City on Tuesday night, a 42-point performance against Belfouche. That was huge, Nate. And then also Blake Elwyn on Tuesday night went for a 30-point game against Brookings. So that's just a few of the top performances that we saw on the boys' side, but there were plenty more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like it that we see some of the same names on the list every week, because that okay, there is something there with some of these players. But then we get the opportunity to see some of the newer players too that make the list.
Every week. Yep.
And that's what makes it fun. Again, the Game Changers list is always a compliment to you guys, the viewers, for sending us some of these stats and things like that in the world we live in. We certainly do appreciate it.
Yep.
So those are the boys' Game Changers. What about the girls' Game Changers?
Well, you talked about people we see every week. Let's go to Ashlyn Copel with another huge week, a 35-point performance against Parkston. Hit that 27 against Hamlin at the Hanson Classic, and then Tuesday night comes out with another huge game against Miller. So just constantly on this list. How about Payson O'Neill? We talked about Rush O'Neill. Payson also got a 31-point game against Upton. She did that last Friday. Morgan Shepard went for 26 and 10. Huge double-double for her and Flandreau as they took down Madison. Addie Simpson, Simpson has been tremendous for Mitchell all season long. In AA, getting 24 points is no joke. That's a big-time performance. Addie Neuendorf in their loss hit 8 3-pointers against Wagner.
8.
That's clicking. That's clicking on that side. Oakley Weber had a 29-point, 11-steal performance for Bridgewater Emory. Vida Amon for Freeman had a huge game with 9 steals, almost a double-double just with her points and steals. And then Allie Kierstead, a 40-point game. But look at that, 8 of 10 from the three-point strike.
Yeah, that's one of those games where she's the hot hand. If she's open, find her and just keep feeding it to her, because sometimes players have games like that, and if you're a Wall Eagles fan. I mean, that is exciting to watch when you see a player go off like that.
She can shoot. I mean, I looked at her game log through the rest of the year, and she'll make a couple threes every game, but nowhere near the 8 threes, the 8 for 10, that she did against Chamberlain. So shout out big time to Allie.
All right. So real quick, let's just take a brief pause, and we're going to just encourage everybody once again that this is the people show. Game Time is all about you guys. It wouldn't be possible without you guys. It airs every Wednesday night on TV on SDPB1. It's at 9 Mountain, 10 Central. So be sure to check that out if you want to watch it, I guess, on television and do that route. But it's also on YouTube every week. It's on the audio versions on the podcast world on Spotify and Apple. Please subscribe.
I've had a lot of people tell me they use the audio version too. So.
Yep. If you're in your car, I mean, Game Time's a perfect way to kill some time and things like that too. So we certainly appreciate it. And then also stay tuned in the coming weeks. We're going to be talking about some of the winter state events that are going to get started. We got one-act plays on the horizon with state team dual wrestling around the corner, gymnastics, esports, all of that before we even get to like the individual state wrestling tournaments. So there's a lot of action coming up. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about some of that in the weeks ahead. All right. We talked about the game changers. We talked about the headlines for the week. We talked about the results of the girls' Hanson Classic. Let's preview the boys' Hanson Classic.
I think there are a lot of people looking forward to some of these matchups, and as usual, the Hanson Classic finds some of the best talented teams in Class A and Class B, and then they match them up just perfectly. And boy, we've got some good ones coming up. There was one postponement of one game, so there's only 7 games instead of the normal 8-game schedule, but it is still chock full of great competition.
All right, so we're going to have White River versus Hanson to start out the event in the late morning, and that one kind of will set the tone for the day.
It'll set the tone. White River, of course, has had a ton of success over the last couple of decades. Not the best team that they've had. Same thing with Hanson, but it should be very well competed. There should be 2 teams that should be able to go at it, and the competition level will set the right pace for this Boys Hanson Classic.
And then you got Dakota Valley versus Sioux Valley. These 2 teams and these 2 coaches, they know each other well from some of their matchups over the years.
These are 2 teams that are used to playing later in the day at the Hanson Classic because they try to get the competition a little bit more intense as the schedule goes. But don't be surprised if you see either of these 2 teams make a run. I mean, Bill Vincent's got a great squad there. They've been sharing the scoring, and they're 7-3 on the year. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. And Dakota Valley's played an extremely tough schedule. Tate Sorensen and then their freshmen have really been improving as the year goes on. I think this is a team that's really dangerous and a very entertaining way to get your second game from the Boys Hanson Classic.
And then we got Lyman versus Parkston. Both these teams just 2 losses on the year.
Yeah, and Parkston got back into the rankings. Lyman really close to getting back into the rankings. MJ Deem and some of the players on Lyman have really been outstanding this year, and we don't get enough chance to talk about all these different teams, but I've been really impressed with what they've done on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to have their hands full with a really young junior-filled team with Bryson Bruning and Jervik and some of these guys who can really fill it up from the outside for Parkinson. So again, a great evenly matched battle between 2 teams that are kind of lurking in the bottom toward part of the rankings, but have a chance to make a real push at the end of the season.
Absolutely, and then you got Wessington Springs, who's a team that seems to be finding their stride against Freeman, who we were really high on at the beginning of the year. Very athletic group that they have in Freeman. This one does have the opportunity to steal the show.
When I looked at this slate, a couple months ago, I thought these 2 teams might be playing the nightcap because I think these both have championship potential teams. Wessington Springs now has Logan Mebius back. After he's been out the first semester after switching schools, so he's going to be a huge boost to this Wessington Springs team. And Parker Graff has been awesome. Colby Flowers in our game changers week in, week out. And then Freeman with David Walter. This guy continues to get more and more skilled as the year goes on. I love this matchup. It's going to be a lot of athletes flying around the court.
Yeah, and that's what we love. It makes exciting basketball when there's a lot of athletes that are just making plays, even when it doesn't look like there's nothing.
It's going to be really good. It's going to be really good.
And then Hamlin versus Viborg Hurley. Viborg Hurley, still undefeated on the year.
Still undefeated, and at the beginning of the year, talking to Coach Warwick, he said it's going to take some time for us to get going. Well, they kind of skipped that part of the season and said Brady Schroedermeyer said, let's go right now. Let's go compete. They've played a really tough schedule. They've gotten through it scot-free, but now a really tough test, a Class A team above them. Jackson Wadsworth has been outstanding. They're getting a lot of help from the young shooters on the outside like Stormo. I think this Hamlin team, isn't what they were last year with the size that they've had, but this Viborg Hurley team isn't what they were size-wise last year either. So it's a really good matchup between two good teams in two different classes.
Yeah, we look forward to that. And then we've got Lennox versus St. Thomas More, second to last game of the night.
Well, Lennox and St. Thomas More, again, we're just talking straight athletes. Every time I watch St. Thomas More, I'm more and more impressed. Buzzy Gilton, some of the high-flying putbacks and dunks that this guy's had throughout the year, and then the shooting that they're getting from the outside, and then all those players who played football too, are great defenders on the basketball court as well. So I love this St. Thomas More team. Despite the 2 losses, they competed as well with West Central as any other team has all season long. So watch out for them. And then Lennox, despite their record, this is a team I think that can play with anybody in the state. And Tate Gertis is a great shooter from the outside, but they've got a little inside-outside combination with this team and a lot of different players that can fill it up. So much like on the football field, these two teams had a lot of success because of their athletes. They're going to have a lot of success in the basketball season with some of those same athletes.
Yeah, and the one thing too, and I think a lot of schools can relate to this, but when you have football players that then transition over to basketball, a lot of times on the defensive side, they are a bit more aggressive, and they do take, and it's that football IQ a little bit of just, pound,
the
every play
yeah.
that doesn't make them be as hesitant on the basketball court in certain situations that are sometimes hard to teach for just pure basketball players.
Exactly, and you see it. The intensity is there on defense on both sides, but the skill is there too. The basketball skill is definitely there for both teams. Looking forward to this Class A matchup.
And then the nightcap, West Central versus Clark Willow Lake, tale of the two unbeatens.
Well, you got West Central, who, last week was playing without Connor Mebius, and we don't know if he'll play on Saturday or not. He's got some issues that he's not comfortable playing with quite yet, so we'll see if he plays. And he's going to be a huge factor in this game, whether he plays or not. But despite that, we're going to have a great matchup because West Central, has one of the more dominant big men in the state in Will Cool. He can shoot it from the outside, the mid-range. He's athletic, and he can rebound. That's going to be a really interesting matchup against Sully Feldberg, the sophomore from Clark Willow Lake, who's, getting D1 interest as a sophomore, 6'8" guy who doesn't see a lot of 6'10", or 6'11" guys that he has to guard. So that's going to be a primetime matchup. This Clark Willow Lake team is super competitive. And when I had a chance to talk to Jerome Nesheim, which we'll show you here in a second, he said, this team is so competitive, and that makes the difference. And then Dave Hollenbeck says the same thing about his West Central team. These guys are going to treat this like a state tournament game. It's probably maybe some seeding that will matter. And the pride of just staying undefeated and winning on a big stage. But this game means a lot just because they're stepping on the court and both teams are super competitive. So I'm really looking forward to these two undefeated teams in Class A, and I think these two teams have a chance to go a long way in the state.
Is this your game of the week?
This is my game of the week. This is going to be awesome. A couple undefeated teams, and like I said, I had a chance to catch up with the head coach Jerome Nesheim, and he talks a little bit about this matchup and going back and playing a coach like Dave Hollenbeck, who he's had a lot of experience with in the past. First of all, just the atmosphere, being able to play in the nightcap at the Hanson Classic.
Well, we just got done talking to our boys. We've been anywhere from the first team in the Hanson Classic, and now this group's going to play as the last game. So that's kind of how we evolved here. We were there one year where we watched DW girls practice. We were there that early. So we evolved to the late game and playing the Corn Palace and playing in Mitchell. Mitchell has got such a different atmosphere because everyone goes to the games, whether they have someone to watch or not watch. Everyone goes to the games in Mitchell. So it makes it a great atmosphere, and it's kind of an atmosphere that you kind of want to play in just to get ready for the, your SODAC 16 and your state tournament.
Going against the Dave Hollenbeck coach team, you guys are pretty similar style-wise, I think.
Yeah, we are. Dave and I go way back to even, our first matchup was in 2005 3 or 4 in the state tournament. So we go way back. It's kind of the same style. We both run a lot of sets. Defense is the key. He's got so many good athletes there at West Central right now. So, and you put a Dave Hollenbeck in a group like that, they're going to be really hard to beat.
So what are you up against? You're the number 1 team in the state, undefeated versus undefeated. What do you think the keys to this game are against a really good defensive team with a really big man in the middle?
Well, I think Will Cool is probably one of the better big mans in the state that we've seen in a while. He's able to extend it. He's able to get to the lane. He's able to post up. So it's going to be a nice matchup between him and Sully. It's going to be a huge learning curve for Sully to be able to defend someone that athletic compared to him. So, it's going to come down to the teams that execute offensively well enough, just because we run so many different sets. And on the defensive end, you can't allow West Central to have 2 or 3 opportunities at scoring each possession. You have to win the rebounding battle over them.
If you can, make your way to Mitchell. It's going to be fantastic. This Clark Willow Lake West Central game is going to be really good. Remember, the Connor Mebius factor could sway things a little bit. But Clark Willow Lake, they've got a lot of really good juniors and a really good senior leader in Emerson Larson. So watch out for Clark Willow Lake. They have a chance to make their name on the stage because all season long it's been West Central, Sioux Falls Christian.
Yep.
What do we do about those two? And now Clark Willow Lake has a chance to chime in.
Yep, get into that conversation and make people like us think a little harder about what the potential is week to week and what we might see at the end of the year. So, all right, Hanson Classic, we look forward to it. What are some of the other top tilts for the week?
The top tilt, these are what you have to plan your schedule around for the next 7 days. Thursday, January 22, just happens to be my birthday, and look at this. Look at the birthday present I get. We get Spearfish taking on Makpialuta. We talk about the girls' Makpialuta team, but this boys' team has been really good, and now they test themselves against an undefeated AA team.
Yeah, and I think there was so much hype at the beginning of the year with the girls' team from Makpialuta that, myself included here, we forgot about the boys' side of Makpialuta. We saw what they did at LNI. This is a team that's really, really good.
Yeah, this is going to be a test for both teams. Spearfish needs a test as well, so that's coming up. Vibrant Hurley taking on Baltic, another, they just get off playing the Hanson Classic against the Class A team. They get another tough Class A team on Thursday. Vermilion, Sioux Falls Christian. Vermilion's had a couple of really tough losses this year, including that last-second loss to Lennox last week. They have a big chance to test themselves. Lennox taking on West Central in a doubleheader. They got boys and girls games, and both those teams are ranked on both sides. In the girls' side, you got Clark Willow Lake, who just got into the rankings, plays another really quality opponent in Roncalli. And then Mobridge Pollock girls and Lakota Tech girls. That one could be a really interesting, low-key, awesome barn burner type of game on Thursday as well.
Yeah, a lot of good games on Thursday. Plus, there's a few games on Saturday, too, that really are striking our interest with Cheyenne Eagle Butte at Stanley County.
Yeah,
and then, of course, the Hanson Classic, which we've talked about.
Yeah, both CEB and Stanley County, having great years. So they're not in the Hanson Classic, but, of course, all the Hanson Classic games we talked about. And then on the girls' side, you got Brandon Valley going to Aberdeen Central. So Aberdeen Central just coming off the O'Gorman game, now test themselves against the number 1 Brandon Valley team. At least they get to do it at home. There's a couple games in a classic in Irene, Wakanda, where Lakota Tech takes on Dakota Valley. And then West Central plays Coleman Egan. That'll be an interesting one. Coleman Egan still undefeated. West Central, much better than people thought on the girls' side. Monday, we've got a doubleheader between boys and girls, Lennox and Hamlin game. Again, Lennox, both girls and boys teams are good. Hamlin, both the girls and boys teams are good as well.
That'll be a good one, too. And then, of course, next Tuesday, you got Mitchell versus Huron. Huron, really had a nice pop there at the beginning of the year. They're looking to kind of rebound. Mitchell, another quality team. They've had some exciting games this year, including a buzzer beater to open their new venue. You got Spearfish at St. Thomas More, Sully Buttes at Stanley County, and Wagner Corsica Stickney. That one too is going to be a good one
Yeah,
next
Corsica
Tuesday.
Stickney trying to get a signature win. Well, they'll have their opportunity against a really good Wagner team. By the way, that Mitchell-Huron game is a throwback classic game. It's going to be at the Sanford Pentagon, so you're so used to them playing their games, within 20 miles of each other. They're going to head over to Sioux Falls to play that one.
Yeah, so a lot of great games on the horizon, and next week we'll obviously recap everything that took place from the Boys Hanson Classic, and yeah, it'll set us up good, I think, for the month of February as we look at turning the calendar.
Yeah, just keep up with Game Time. We're going to have a lot of great matchups, but next week it'll be a lot of fun to break down what happened at the Hanson Classic.
All right, well, we'd like to appreciate everybody for tuning in once again for another week of Game Time. He's Jason Andera, I'm Nate Wek. We'll see you next week, and happy birthday, Jandy.
Thank you.